One category left. People are very excited.
He was doing the dance.
Yeah.
Oh, it's such a good dance.
Was that the best story dance?
I was excited.
Yes.
To me,
That's
I'm excited
interpretive.
to hear about the best story dance.
Dance of the year.
All right. Here are the nominees for best story as it stands right now. Wolfenstein 2, Nier Automata, Yakuza 0, Night in the Woods, Pyre, Persona 5, Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus. Yes. Assassin's Creed Origins. Did I say Persona 5?
Yes.
Yes, you did.
Tacoma, Tekken 7, Dream Daddy, A Subsurface Circular, What Remains of Edith Finch, A Mortician's Tale. Oh boy. Bury Me, My Love, The Evil Within 2, Hellblade, and Observer.
You missed a couple there at the bottom.
No,
What about Drawn to Death?
No, he did not.
Sonic
miss
Heroes?
those.
Try to Death
Sonic
is less
Heroes.
best story and more best premise, you know?
Yeah,
That's
it's
true.
kind of like
Yeah.
best good game of the year, I'd say.
Yeah.
Best most.
Because Drawn to Death
Best
is like the
most
story,
game.
that's the story you tell in your
We
head.
should say
Yeah.
honorable mention to best story with best entire plot told in a song goes to Cuphead.
Agreed.
Yes.
Yes.
That was awarded in a ceremony
Yeah.
prior
Technical
to the,
awards.
Yeah.
Honest question. How is the story in Knack 2?
We didn't get far enough. Knack's back.
Because the story in Knack 1 is a real piece of work.
Yeah, actually.
Isn't
there-
it a lot of little pieces of work that come together to make a big piece of?
I think they handled the Nazi stuff really well.
It's a big piece of something.
I mean,
Yeah.
you joke, but
What?
there's some weird.
There's some weird oppression going
Some
on in
weird
that
stuff
world.
in Knack.
Yeah.
What?
Knack is weird. Let's not talk about
Okay.
that.
Definitely not
Made
talking
Hitler
about
poop
Knack.
too
Okay,
much.
honest question. Honest question. How is the story in Injustice 2? We have had fighting games with good stories.
It was big and stupid in a way that I like NetherRealm stories to be.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know anything about those characters, but, like, I don't know. I watched all that
I
stuff.
think the Injustice 1 story... Oh, that's very cutting.
Yeah.
I watched all that stuff, says Dan Reichert. I think the Injustice 1 story is probably better.
little bit better,
Like
yeah.
it's a better because and part of that's maybe it's unfair because it's like a full setup for that alternate universe, so it puts a lot of that stuff in motion. Whereas Injustice 2 is it's a continuation of that, and it's just like, hey, Superman sure is a fucking
Dick still.
fascist, and that's interesting in a lot
It's
ways.
kind of cool seeing people like switch sides and are just like you wouldn't expect them to be on that side, I guess.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that, but then I don't know, like it gets mired in a lot of this, like, hey, let's spend a lot of time looking at Gorilla Grodd. And,
There's a lot of characters in
Okay.
that game that I really don't care about that much.
Yeah.
How's Swampo's arc?
It's great.
Is the Swampo arc? Swampus' arc is not too. I don't know. Not one of my favorite parts of the game. He's like, you shouldn't poison the trees,
Yeah.
and now we have to fight. And then you beat him up, and he's like,
I'm going back to the wilderness.
I'm going
back to the green.
I gotta go. Yeah, he's got to go hit that green.
I love my Swampus.
Yeah.
It's no Mortal Kombat 9 story mode.
No, definitely not.
I did
I
think
don't
about
even-
putting it on here, but I like the first one a lot better.
Yeah.
It's still good, especially in terms of fighting games. But
And now the Marvel one's not good, right?
Other than the few things I mentioned,
Because you did mention some kind of neat stuff.
Two good moments from the sound of it.
That is the first time we got a cackle out of Jason during this, so I think that's your answer.
there's a part where Spider-Man and Frank West team up. And, so first it's Spider-Man, and do you remember who else is there before Frank West shows up? It's Spider-Man talking to somebody from the like Chun-Li or something.
Yeah.
And they're talking, and then Spider-Man's like, "Oh God, my spider senses are tingling. What's that smell? Oh God, it's a terrible." And then the door opens, and it's Frank West, and he walks out. And
Is
he's
there like a tuba line underneath him to just really hammer home that
No,
like,
it's
this
that he
guy's
walks in and
real
says,
wacky?
"Hey guys, I covered wars, you know."
Yeah.
He does
Did they
that.
ever establish that Frank West is stinky?
No,
I
just
don't
that he
think so.
sucks.
I think it's just
Just
implied that
he's a
he's a
degenerate.
drunk.
I
like Yeah. He's like a Dan Aykroyd.
I wish I could remember what the actual story in Observer was.
I remember it.
You do? Is it
Yeah,
worth
it's about
putting on
him
there?
trying to find his son and him not being sure if his son was alive or dead, and him uncovering the mystery of where his son is, and then in the end it really ties it together more.
Okay. Is it worth being on this list?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if it'll be top 3, but I think the story is captivating.
It's a full game, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's not like made to be episodic or anything like that.
No,
I don't know where I got
it
that
has
idea.
a very definite
Okay,
ending.
I don't know where I got that
Yeah.
idea from.
I would also say Local Host has a very good story. I don't know if it's going to be
Oh,
worth
right, you mentioned
talking
that.
about this,
Yeah.
but Local Host is a really interesting story.
Yeah, that looks cool. I'm gonna
Yeah, I
check
like
that
it.
out.
Yeah.
I would move to remove Edith Finch.
Oh.
I think there are very good parts in that thing.
I think it's a series of like vignettes.
Yes,
Yeah.
and
Some are
of them,
good.
Some of them
Yeah.
work, and some not as much.
The connective tissue with the Edith Finch character and sort of her kind of discovering this lineage of her family and stuff, like I think that's all generally pretty well done, but it is all also a little bit slight.
Some of it.
Right. I do think it is impactful, like how it ends of like her about to have a kid, but like knowing she's going to die too, or something like that. Or did she have the
No,
kid?
there's-
It's like
The
kid-
implication is that the
is-
kid is born, but she dies.
She dies during
yes.
childbirth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
I thought that was bad.
Oh, really?
I really thought that was like a cheap shot. It felt like I felt like the whole thing was like.
I mean-
I thought the whole point was that it's supposed to be this life affirming, like look back on the troubles of her family, and then how she's going to move on.
Nope.
And forge a new
I-
path. Like it just felt cheap to me. Like it felt like the opposite of what that game was trying to do to me at the end.
I disagree in the sense that I kind of feel like there was no way out from everything they were laying out before that. Like that whole family, whether you believe in the curse or not, has convinced themselves so deeply of the curse that I think that there's just no necessarily escaping that the way that, like I don't think she could just walk away from that without any sort of, unscathed. And like I agree that maybe like doing it with the childbirth thing and then having the kid go back and sort of read her stories sort of back at the end there was like maybe a little on the nose for what they were doing, but I don't think it was bad or unearned.
Yeah.
I do.
And I think there's some parts that's, it could be argued that like, well, she's teaching your child like, yeah, you might die, everybody dies, it's okay. Like life is still worth living. I'm so glad I had you, even though it killed me, kind of thing. Like I think there's some merit to that story.
In a way, her death is the least tragic of all of them
Right.
because at least it was, at least she brought life into the world, whereas everyone else just died in various horrible, tragic ways.
It just felt incredibly on the nose to me.
That's fine. I get it.
All right. Well, it sounds like that's getting cut.
Yeah.
So
I think we should also cut. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say once again, not on the list, Divinity Original Sin 2.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure has
Pour
a good
one
story.
out.
Also, I was going to say the setup for the Surge I really liked. Oh,
Yes,
Yes.
I have been
yeah.
thinking about bringing up the Surge
I
like
also thought
3 or
about
4
the Surge.
times.
Game where also the protagonist starts in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Like the wheelchair reveal in the intro of that game is fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, the way they
You're on
handle
that bus, right?
But then there's the scene of you getting bolted into your suit, and then I wanted to turn the game off.
I like
I
the
still
setup
don't
for
know
it.
what they were going for with that.
Horror, I believe, is what they were going for.
Like, why no anesthetic? What's going on there?
I mean, you're like, gotta get to work, man. You're picking that whole pick your suit thing. I thought
Pain
was
is
kind
the
of
greatest
That was cool.
motivator.
That was cool.
I just remember you going in and out and
Yeah.
like listening to the voice.
I wanted to hear all the game had to offer, but I didn't play enough of it to know where that story even goes.
I don't know either because like the game itself lost me.
Yeah.
After 2 or 3 areas.
But hey, the Surge came out this year.
The Surge
That was kind of
has
cool
some
setup.
interesting stuff going on.
I think we should cut Persona 5. I think Persona 5 has some really good intentions. I think they have an interesting idea. I think they do not execute on it to the degree that they set it up for.
Yeah, the themes in that game are something I can very much get behind, and I think that their attempts at sort of, pulling all that together under the sort of like ultra cool, high school crime syndicate shit is interesting. I think it's 2 things. One, I do think there's a lot of bloat in that story. Like there are moments where there just doesn't feel like anything's going on, and they could have excised that in favor of letting you move around the town more and do more stuff on your own, but they don't.
Nope.
And also, like, just for real, the localization for that game did not do it any favors.
It was bad. Also, I'll mention for a fucking super genius in Makoto and all them, and your main character doesn't recognize the bad guy. So the setup for the game is you stumble upon a politician who's being really gross to a woman, and you stop them, and then he calls the cops. He's like, I'm going to say you assaulted me, and I'm going to get you kicked out of this town. So you get kicked out of the town. And then like maybe 15, 20 hours into the game, you cross paths with him as he's like taking an escalator up to a fancy hotel, and you're like, there's something familiar about this man. It's like you do not recognize the man who excised you from your old town.
And like put you in this like what I remember from where I got up to in the game, like 2 things. One, that whole thing is just incredibly weird. Like everybody fucking hates you in that town because you stopped a sexual assault, which was weird. And then the other thing, for the amount that I played of it, I think I was just starting to get out of this. There's just no likable characters. Like when I started that, like your foster dad sucks. All the teachers suck. They're just all talking about how like, ugh, why does this kid have to be in my class?
They really lay that on thick. And I will say that over time, some of those characters and personalities do like grow on you. They do have like, you know, an actual arc that goes places that I think are pretty interesting. But also like in some of those heists are amazing, but some of the ones toward the end of the game, especially the one that
Shino's dungeon, the boat.
Well, there's that, and then there's also the whole part where you fucking pull the fast one on in the interrogation room.
I've had to talk through that specific series of events over with like multiple people multiple times to fully understand
like they're trying
exactly what happened.
They're trying to do that Ocean's 11. Well, here's how it really happened thing, but they spend literally a half an hour trying to explain it because it makes no fucking sense.
It's all about cognition and whose mind you're really inside. It's like bad Inception. It's like way worse Inception. It's
some of it is great, but it's not enough.
Pretty clear this is not.
Yeah, sorry, I just had to get that off.
No,
my
that's
chest.
fair. That's fair. This is the time to say it.
Jeff, what's the story mode? What's the plot of Tekken 7?
It's that
Kazuya hates his dad.
Dads and sons, man.
Akuma shows up. You go to the Vatican at one point.
Jin is missing.
Okay.
He's wandering out in the desert.
Is the Devil Gene still causing trouble?
Definitely.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
This story is the kind of the culmination of all of that stuff in a lot of ways. And you have like the G Corporation and the Mishima Zaibatsu and all
They
this
sponsor
stuff.
a pop idol.
Yeah, that's right. Right. They sponsor a pop idol. And it's not one of the three best stories.
It sounds really
It's one of
good.
the better fighting game
It's
stories.
one of my favorite fighting game story modes, probably
Yeah.
of
It is
all time.
also told incredibly poorly.
Yeah, it's
like,
really disjointed. There's some like weird narration that goes on.
It's like, you're hearing it from the perspective of some newspaper reporter.
Oh, right,
who is
I
just
forgot
like,
about
and
that
it's all
stuff.
delivered in the flat.
That's
the worst.
Yeah,
so
that
I
shit
went
is
to
bad.
go see him about the G
The narration
Corporation.
is
I
terrible.
was on board with this until you reminded me of the reporter
That's-
stuff. And
that
I was like, nope, fuck
sucks.
this.
And even though it's separate from the main story stuff, I did like at least some of the little like side story vignettes around the other characters that aren't plot critical. I think some of that shit's really funny and weird.
A lot of that stuff.
It's also
the-
kind of forgettable.
The side character stuff, like that's usually like one fight. There's side things, and it's like a still image with some text.
Yeah,
It's
it's-
A couple of them
That
are kind of
stuff's
funny and
kinda
weird.
rough.
I like that
but
first
not
fight.
nearly any. Like Tekken has a long reputation of having these really dumb CGI endings, you know, and there's none of that.
They put all the old ones in there.
Yeah,
So
right. They
can we
put
count the entirety of Tekken? Because that would win.
I mean, that's probably true.
the full Tekken story?
It's the greatest story ever told.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm bummed they didn't do new character endings.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing where
sucks.
they don't really
Wait, so
do that the same
I
way they
really-
used
Kuma
to.
in that game.
Yeah.
But
Kuma
he's not,
the bear?
working in an office or whatever.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, they have stories and some of them are goofy for sure, but they're just not told with the same extravagance that they were.
No, they're not.
but
in
the
the
ending,
past
man,
games,
that
so.
whole
I like that first
volcano.
fight where it's
Great
all
moments.
sepia toned and you're fighting
Yeah.
Heihachi as a kid.
Yeah,
That's
really
kinda
really
cool.
good
Yeah.
moments, but the story itself. no.
Kid Kazuya. Oh, he was best character.
I will say, as much as I love Dream Daddy, I don't know if it's going to be in the top 3 here. I think the story is super positive, and I love playing through it. There's not like a lot of meat there.
I
Like,
think there totally
there's a lot of
is.
there's
Like,
a lot of hunk meat.
nothing but meat.
I think there's a lot of meat there, especially if you play through all of the dad storylines. Like one, I think just the through line with his daughter. I think is pretty meaty. I think this game could have been much more shallow. Obviously, it's not about like what it could have been, but
Yeah.
like this game on paper should be very shallow, and I don't think it's that at all.
well, I think it's a game that trucks on the narrative.
Yeah.
but it's a game that is supposed to be. If the game were shallow, then it wouldn't be a good game.
I think it's a
Right,
game that
sure.
strong points are its characters, its writing,
Yeah.
its stuff, but it doesn't all come together to form a like cohesive plot.
Oh, I think it absolutely does.
I just
I
think
mean,
they're.
I guess you're right. It's more interpersonal
I think
stuff.
that like the parts are like the discovering the different dad stories are like
Right.
the main part. I think the story with the daughter, which is the thing that ties it all together, is like interesting, but like there's,
I like it.
there's
And
not a lot. I like it too, but I don't know if it's the top 3 on here.
Sure. I think I know like with a lot of the dads I've gone through and a lot of the dates I've gone through, you do discover a lot of the backstory with like your personal dad and like stuff with his former partner and like dealing with death and loss, and like you discover that within the other characters too. I think the story is very good in that game. I understand why it maybe is not gonna be top 3.
Yeah, like I want to give it a graceful send off before somebody else cuts it.
Like, I'm looking at the top 5 games on this list, and I'm having a hard time seeing anything below it, like, beating those.
Yeah.
I'll since we haven't talked about this game much, I do want to give it props here, which is The Evil Within 2. I think the game has a really, really chunky middle chapter that gets back in some like weird Resident Evil grandiose bullshit, but for the most part, the story between Sebastian, his wife, and him reconciling the loss or / not loss of his daughter is really good. I feel like this character was introduced. He has a lot of cheesy one-liners. He seems kind of lame, but throughout the game, you kind of get more of a look of him and his guilt, and he's just kind of like The Evil Within is a really good name for this game because a lot of it is him overcoming the guilt of him blaming himself for his daughter's death.
Did you feel like you needed to have played the first one before playing the second one? Because when we played it, I felt like there was a lot of stuff we didn't know.
I feel like right off the bat, yeah, like up front, because like it starts with her being like
you're back
it's been
in
3 years.
Yeah. Like you're back in it. Like I don't know what we were in,
but like once, so I like went and read Wikipedia. on it. And I feel like that filled in the couple of the small
jumps
holes.
you in real quick with like a machine that is basically the Matrix machine being run by your ghost of your daughter, and it's just like,
oh yeah, that goes to your daughter thing.
like okay, I'll roll with you here.
They set up your wife to kind of be a surprising like main antagonist in the game, but and like you kind of figure out her intentions and stuff, and I think they really do deliver on a really cool family small plot. I think because of the middle chapter, it being like, you know, you fight some guy who's like, I'm God, and you're like, no, you're not.
I just didn't understand I wasn't buying it. I think I just attributed this to not knowing what The Evil Within 1 was. Like the setup of like, we lost a special forces team inside the world that can only be held together by the thoughts of your daughter. Can you go and go get
your daughter is missing.
Also, your daughter is missing, but she's dead, but her ghost is
also,
in there.
I work for that company, but I'm a good guy.
Anyway, we need you to go in there and find the special forces team. And I was like, I don't know who I am. I was just a dude like a diner.
There's that like dossier of the 5 different agents, and you're like, what does this mean?
Yeah, which was like, I just felt like we had missed a lot.
I think when you stick with it, it becomes a little more clear, especially because like you find slides and audio stuff and a lot of stuff. And there's actually a really powerful moment where you're back inside your old home with your wife and kid, and you have to like kind of live out a normal day with them as this weird stuff is happening to the environment around your house. I think it's a pretty good story, especially as far as survival horror goes, which typically kind of falls flat in the story department, minus like The Last of Us, I guess.
All right.
It didn't seem like people had a ton of reverence for Tacoma.
I think it's a very good story.
Yeah, I do
it
too.
is. Right up until the big reveal with the corporate stuff, I was way into it. But I was still into it. I just like that stuff read as a little bit obvious to me.
I was actually more into it once that stuff came around.
It's an interesting revelation. I just feel like the way they handled it was a little blunt.
Yeah, that's
that
fair.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it doesn't
like
play with the same.
They kind of beat you over the head with it a little bit.
Like, not that I demand that this do the same things as Gone Home, because I think that's like the worst thing to expect a developer to do. But I don't feel like that had the same impact or the same surprise factor that like Gone Home's like twist on the genre thing did.
I will say, the first surprise was like kind of not a surprise, but the second one actually.
I mean, the part where you take the AI off
last
the ship.
30 seconds when you find out who your character actually is, like that one took me by surprise. That was cool. That was
the best part of the story.
I think when you learn the evil corporate truth, the way it's all like arrayed around this room, like it's a science fair project. You know what I mean? Like they present it a little bit like here's the info dump of all the bad stuff that's going on, all in this one room for you to read. Like that part felt a little forced to me.
I think most of what they do with the characters is good. I liked watching those little vignettes play out.
They develop like characters that you never actually see bodily, you know, like they're just little colored silhouettes.
Yeah,
but they develop those characters super well.
I feel like the draw of the story is in the characters, and this is maybe better for like best cast of characters or like best characters versus best story. Like I think the story's good and interesting, but I think that there are better stories on here.
Okay.
I agree.
Well, whatever. We won't get too much into it. I was actually super interested in their like the world they seem to have devised. Right. Like you see people's like ID cards, and like it's very clear that the United States has dissolved at this point.
Oh,
and like I wanted to know more about that stuff.
The best part was when they started actually naming droppings like real fucking corporations, like as sort of the overseers of all this stuff, like fucking Amazon's, brought to you by Amazon's fucking.
Like the future, in their future, there's like a loyalty points concept that it basically functions as currency. That like you build up loyalty with corporations that allows you to go to college with them
I
and
think
stuff
Amazon
like that.
College was like a thing
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
their kids is going to. Like, it's an interesting story. It's an interesting world. I mean, I guess there can be arguments made for it. But I don't think it's like.
I don't think it's top
I don't think
three.
it's going to hang
I don't
here,
think
but
it's top three.
there's a lot of good stuff in there.
There is.
Brad, what do you think of the Hellblade story?
I like it quite a bit, but I don't think anybody else likes that game as much as me.
I wanted to like it a lot more than I did.
Yeah, same.
I didn't make it to the end of it, so I don't know how it resolves.
All right.
All right.
It sounds like Observer doesn't necessarily stay on this list either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Observer has a cool story. I
couldn't
really
remember
do.
it.
I think there's a cool arc. I think when you finish it, it starts to tie together more because
Okay.
it does seem like an overwhelming amount of like information and like everyone else's stories,
Yeah.
and you can kind of. I think once you get to the end, you see how they all sort of fuel together a little bit better, or fuse together.
I think maybe the one thing that detracts from it for me is that the lead actor seems like he barely cares about that story, which is unfortunate. Like, I understand that, like, you know, he's not the only thing that matters in that, and the writing, you know, is probably better than the performance he is giving. But when your lead performance and lead character is meant to carry you through that stuff, like, Rutger Hauer sounds like he would rather be anywhere else.
I didn't have that much of an issue with that. It didn't take away from the story for me at all. If anything, it just sort of sounds like a drunk old detective, which I was like, okay, sure.
Does the murder mystery kind of pay off?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, I think what happens in the end is very interesting. I think the choices you have to make at the end are very interesting. I it's probably not top 3, but I do think it's absolutely an interesting story, especially in how it ends.
One day I will finish that game.
I like the story with the lady who wants to take over the body of the other girl.
Yeah,
That
like
part's really
they're
interesting.
cool little like side stories too that I think are really captivating. And there's like sad stuff. Like I think there's that one with that dude who like killed himself.
Yeah,
And like
it's a grim.
it's
a grim world.
sad world. Yeah. And there are like a lot of weird characters in it of like the people you meet and some like I don't know. There are a lot of really weird characters.
I'm just going to say this, not to get ahead of ourselves, but I cannot envision this category without Wolfenstein and Nier in it.
That's for sure.
Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure.
I don't know. I think Wolfenstein has a lot of cool storytelling moments, but like as a beginning to end story, is it really something
Like,
that
as
I
a
care
coherent
about?
narrative?
Yeah.
I think it's the best of the year by far.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think absolutely.
Really?
Yeah, definitely the best.
Absolutely.
I feel like it falls short. I feel like it like BJ's story is good. I really like his arc, but it does, as we've mentioned, feel like a middle chapter game. It feels like it's like, to me, a good story needs at least a decent ending.
I like the ending of that.
And I feel like the ending of Wolfenstein is very much, hey, we're gonna kick some ass soon.
But you're
Again,
right. But like they kick some ass there at the end
They
as
do.
well. So I think like they dodge some of the middle chapter stuff by giving you something to hang like the end of that story on. Like, hey, here's a major thing that happened. We resolved the fate of this evil general who was like dogging you through the first game. And you're
Also,
like,
she runs America. Like, she is the top dog as far as the country you're fighting for
like
is concerned.
it's not a like I feel like that moment undersells how important that is, but like in terms of what they do, you know, like it is a major plot point.
I think it deserves a spot on our list, but I just feel like it has too many little issues in it.
Yeah, like the thing for me is that it's not that I think Wolfenstein's story is bad. It's just that I think that it is wildly uneven in a way that some of these other stories are not.
Yeah.
See, I feel like it's like a crazy roller coaster in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Where like there are parts of it that are better than others. Like but it builds and releases, I think, over the course of it.
Yeah.
And it peppers it with so many different like incredible moments that like you can't believe you're seeing in a video game. And also, I think the contents of the story, along with like the things they fill in about the state of the world around you and stuff like that, I think is so well realized and like daring in a sense that I was really blown away.
Yeah,
like
totally.
that is the thing with that game.
Yep.
Much like with Nier, I think like in a very similar way.
Like I go back and forth on it. I think the kind of overarching story of Wolfenstein 2 is kind of neither here nor there, state of the world. But I think the character progression of the people that in that world is more
It
interesting.
actually reminds me a lot of Mass Effect 2.
Kind of.
Like, it's very much about getting a band together
Yeah,
and,
like
building up a movement
like they don't hammer home
to do some real shit.
like what happens to America in that story,
Yeah.
but you very much know the resistance is alive and
Yeah.
well, and these people are here
You get the point at the end, which is that they have built their movement to the point that they can cut the head off of the beast by taking her out at the end,
or at least
that,
or at least they're
it is-
punching back,
Right. Yes. Totally.
Which I think is a very it's a kind of smaller scale. They set up do they call it the Third Reich or is it the Fourth Reich?
It's still the third.
Okay.
They don't.
They
Actually
set up
use
the
that
Nazis as
terminology.
this kind of like steamroller, right? That is
Yeah.
just going across the world, and like even to have like a black eye seems like a big accomplishment for those characters.
I think it's the Greater Reich. Actually,
Okay, whatever it is.
I mean, the thing though is that like, you know, a lot of that really is just the preternatural Nazi shredding abilities of BJ. Like the way they talk about building the movement in that game, like you meet two different resistance groups who are like, as far as I can tell, a loose assemblage of like 20 people each. And like, you know, the way they sort of frame it is like, you know, we're taking America back, we're taking them by storm. The way you take America back is by doing those weird side missions that feel like they actually have no real tie or thread to what you're doing in the game. It's just like you go kill those commanders, and then some states are no longer are like red.
I mean, I think a lot of it is implied. You know, like you've got the room of like hackers that come along with Grace, who are like in there cracking codes and like
for all intents and purposes are the Black Panthers.
Well, yeah, sure, but like it's, you know, you walk around that boat and see the ongoing efforts among a lot of different people. Like they imply that a lot is happening behind the scenes.
And I think the boat is where they do the best work with that stuff, because you do get to kind of see the smaller moments with those characters. It's the only time you really feel like they get a chance to kind of breathe and sort of establish themselves to the player.
Yeah.
Like the in-game stuff is very much, I don't want to say in a hurry, because I think there are times when they do take their time in that game, but like it feels like they are trying to jettison you from one crazy moment to the next, and everything that happens in between is just kind of a blur.
Yeah.
I think they do well by not showing the fall of like the Nazi regime, but just showing that like there is like, I think that game's message at the end was like, we have a chance to punch back. Like,
Yeah.
like we found like a hole that we can like stick our finger through, and like, look, they're not invincible.
Definitely.
Right.
And I think that's the thing that, you know, like the thing of like, hey, go do these side missions seems like that's a throwaway line because they put side missions in the game. Like, I feel like the real story moment around that is them saying, hey, we just did this on television and now more people will be inspired to fight back.
Yeah. Right.
And I think that's a really interesting...
Yeah, like
You might say they're not going to take it anymore.
Right. One might infer that they would not be interested in taking much of it, whatever it may be.
As you know, as middle chapters go, like I said, I think it resembles Mass Effect 2 a lot. Like, it has way more closure than The Empire Strikes Back. If you really want to go back to the classic example of like middle chapter without a lot of closure, like it's definitely more self-contained than that.
Yeah,
I don't think that it doesn't have closure. I just think that the ending of it is very much like, oh, get ready for what's coming, baby. It's all about to pop off.
See, like I didn't
Get ready
really-
for the adventures of BJ Blazkowicz and his berry band of rebels next time.
I don't know, like for me, the end of that didn't have that, and maybe that's why I didn't like the ending so much. But like, I appreciate what they were doing. Of like, I don't know where that goes at the end. Like, will America flip over,
and,
or like
and part of it is like I think instead of going that route, like they try to do this almost more heartfelt thing of like everyone's going to give their awkward speech to camera. To America, you know, and kind of try to inspire them, and how they're kind of uneven with that because they are not all great speakers, and they are this ragtag group of people that just fucking cut this lady's face open.
Yeah.
And I like that about it.
I think the objective this time was cutting the head off the snake, and they're setting it up for the next one to be like the greater war to actually like, you know, put them out of power.
Yeah.
I think the highs of this game are some of the best moments of the year. So
For
I
sure.
think it definitely belongs in the top three. But I
think for me, like I was really hoping for something a little bit more, I don't know, I guess just like coherent in the sense
Yeah.
that
you wanted
like,
a meal instead of a bunch of
coherent.
snacks.
I think parts of it are. I think other parts feel like they are very much like the writers are very much stretching their legs in a way to show you how crazy they can make shit in that game. And sometimes it's very memorable, but also like in terms of like a full-on narrative, there are times when those are writers just like funning around and fucking around.
But it's all in service of the same stuff, though. You know, from the backstory with the father to like all the news clippings and stuff you find and the Main Street USA stuff. Like the whole game is about like, hey, here's what it might actually be like how many people you might know that would roll over for this shit out of self-interest.
The thing I'd say is
totally.
like, I think a lot of it is earned. Like they do a lot of crazy shit, but like they foreshadow it in the right ways. They have established a world where some of that technology is not that outlandish, or you know is feasible. Like, hey, reattach a head to a thing, of course. And I feel like they do a lot of shocking things in there that come off as earned things because of how they handle the rest of the game. Honestly, the one thing that stuck out to me was the topless scene, ripping off the shirt, and that's only because I didn't realize that she was on fire.
Right.
That was the one thing where I was like, that seems gratuitous in a weird way. I mean, like, I don't have a problem with it, but it sure is out of left field. Like, oh, okay, all right. Like even that has a basis in something.
Like the entire arc of the game, like I think Alex or somebody mentioned this a couple of categories ago, that like the whole arc feels like it mirrors like the rising of their movement, you know, because the whole first half he's on the death's door and he's super hangdog and like the really grim stuff with his childhood and like confronting the father, and like it's right around the time like you know, confronting the father is basically like going to hell and like vanquishing your demons.
Totally.
And then the execution scene happens and like you're born anew, and then that's when the revolution is starting to kick.
I think
you know
the
what I mean?
BJ stuff is the strongest stuff in that game by a long shot. I just wish like you drew Mass Effect 2 comparisons. I just wish I felt like the team. I wish I knew more about the team. I wish I had been spending more time with them, or got to like, outside of being forced to go out of my way in the boat and talk to everyone. I wish like there was some more story stuff with my team members while I was out in the field.
Yeah, I think they could have like built the team a little bit better, but I think that there's enough there, like talking to the scientist about, you know, all the ancient, or all the weird tech stuff that the Nazis got control of in Roswell and all the other stuff. Like, I think
do they ever
the team members are there when you need them to fill in a gap.
Do they ever get into what the key is? What that thing?
No,
there's an implication. There's an implication on the other side, on the Wyatt side.
Okay,
so there's an implication, but that's it. They are definitely saving that for later.
I was curious. I just couldn't remember.
I'm looking at this list, and again, none of this is to say that I didn't like Wolfenstein's 2 story. I did in a lot of places, but I think when I'm looking at this list, I look at Nier, I look at Yakuza, and I look at Night in the Woods, and I feel like they tell much more complete and like honestly satisfying stories when all is said and done.
I do not. It is damn near impossible for me to envision this category without Wolfenstein on it. Like I really don't.
We gave it its own category for how good the moments were.
But I will say that you can separate the moments from the actual
you absolutely
story.
can.
But I think
I don't agree with that at all.
But I think the story.
I think you can. You can have an amusement park full of like awesome moments.
Totally.
Yeah.
But I feel like I just gave my rationale for why I think it is a very coherent.
I think they string it together really well.
Sure, I'm just saying you could those moments could. It's not impossible. I think it's a tough one. Let's come back to it and talk about the rest of these, because there are very good arguments to be made for the rest of these games on here, or some of these games. I think the story in Yakuza 0 is a very deep and kind of soap opera tale of crime and betrayal, and is like pretty solid for like as silly as it goes.
It's incredibly solid, and you know, granted, this was my first like full foray into that series, so like I can't speak to this completely, but like every person I've talked to who is like a longtime Yakuza diehard has said, yeah, the way they tie in like, you know, bit characters from other games and sort of like establish them and sort of like explain away the way Majima sort of comes to be the way he is, like all that fan service stuff is also done incredibly well.
And like, for as much as I was probably confused during the story, I think I got most of it.
Yeah, no, by the end, I think it actually ties itself up very well.
It was like just hard for me to track a lot of the clans, I think, at some point.
Right. There's a lot of double crossing and different.
It's a lot of double crosses.
Vying for this lot.
But that's that. This is one of those games where like the A plot is incredibly good. It's very well detailed. Like the characters are strong and like they all feel like they serve a purpose within the story. But then also all the side stuff and like the weird little moments in there, like all that shit is really good and weird and interesting on top of that.
There's a ton of character and humor, and like you never really know what you're getting into when you go up to a side mission, like
Exactly.
the Steven Spielberg thing, the Miracle Jackson thing,
Yeah,
or Johnson, whatever it is. There's tons of tiny, silly stories, and then also the overarching one is
like,
great.
The whole thing is wrapped
and,
around like a real estate dispute.
Yes.
Like,
and they make it
and
interesting.
they make that awesome.
Yeah,
like that's
yeah.
crazy.
And it's a real estate dispute that spans 2 major cities and
But,
multiple characters.
It's
and
it's like the real estate thing is like the most mundane part of it, and it's like they make that so messed up because there's Tachibana who is like.
by the way, I
sister,
fucked up by not mentioning for best character. He wouldn't have won, but still.
like his sister who was like
She's from China.
yeah, and like has she winds up having the deed, but she's got had major trauma, so like she lost her sight, and then like winds up being like, oh man, it is just goes deep down a hole of like the whole like person with the tattoo and like your best hit the what is it? Oh, who's the guy who gives up himself in the garage because he doesn't want Tachibana to know?
Oda?
Yeah, Oda.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that whole subplot is good. You're like your brother in arms who was raised by your
Nishiki.
dad. Yeah, like there's a lot of good stuff that happens in that story.
the
so many
evolution of
layers.
Majima's character.
Yes.
Poor Majima.
Yeah.
I love Majima.
Like, I mean, look, he's got a tragic backstory, but it feels like one of those tragic backstories that's actually like deeply earned. Like they go through the paces of that and
they
really like
definitely spend they
Yeah.
spend time on every aspect of this.
Yeah, like it's one of the most complete narratives I've played in a game in a very long time.
It takes its time with that stuff.
And this is a year where there's actually multiple games I can say that about, which is nuts. But
And they
like,
they actually go out of their way to make the crime bosses have pretty rich backstories and
Yeah.
to feel different and not just like crime boss 1, crime boss 2.
like they're all scumbags, but in like to different degrees and with different self-interests. And
Like learning about the structure of the organization and who's angling to take over what.
Yeah.
Which again could have been was maybe a little confusing for me at times, but like I tried.
Yeah.
All right, so
my best.
I mean, like we've talked about a lot of these games now. You know, we've had days of categories and stuff, and I feel like from a lot of that past discussion and what you're saying here, like I really feel like the top 3 here of Wolfenstein, Nier, and Yakuza is like a really fucking strong list.
Yeah, totally.
I'd be really sad to see Night in the Woods
Yeah,
go.
same. I feel like Night in the Woods is another one.
It
that
just
I
feels
think-
like the most like Wolfenstein, Nier, and Yakuza all sound like these really good, large, complex, film-like, like really rich stories. But for me, there was just something about Night in the Woods and how close it hit to home, just the earnestness of it, the care that like feels like it's poured into every. This is the only. That's the only game on the list that I read every piece of ancillary stuff I came across. Like not even in Nier when I like my
It's a very good story, and it's a story I haven't seen in other games before, really. I don't think. Like it's good, it's captivating, like all of the characters feel like real characters, all the dialogue feels like real dialogue. Like I think it's such a good story.
And even the little pieces of like supernatural weirdness that sort of crop up around the end of that game, like they don't feel over the top or like out of left field. Like the way they kind of tie it into some of the other stuff, I think is kind of interesting. Like it's kind of a big metaphor for, sort of a town kind of on the decline and people desperately trying to cling to, a past glory that they don't realize they can never recapture. And the way they sort of pull that out of like into a little bit of like, fucking cosmic dread shit is interesting.
Yeah.
But really it's the characters and it's the way you interact with them. And also just, the fact that they're willing to make May not a particularly admirable person, like
totally.
her whole thing is that like she's kind of a fuck up and a burnout and doesn't know what to do with her life, and they're not afraid to kind of portray her as just lashing out and uncomfortable and unsure what to do with herself.
It
Totally.
just makes her totally unlikable from what I played.
But that's the
She
thing.
just seemed awful.
I
she's
disagree.
brutal.
I think she's so charming.
I didn't like any of those characters.
Like the thing about May is that like she's a mess and like she definitely like will rub people the wrong way at times, but I think that like they spend the time to sort of like to nudge that in a different direction. Like she actually does learn lessons over the course of that game and does not just stay the same sort of like disaffected sort of miserable person the whole way through.
Yeah.
whiny and snarky. Yeah.
Okay, are there any games below Night in the Woods that anybody's like
Listen,
super
I like
attached to?
Pyre.
Pyre Story's great. It's not necessarily top 3, but like they do a really good job of both building up that world and those characters.
And investing you in it and investing you in all the teams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I really liked being with those characters a lot.
I feel like it's not gonna be able to duke it out with the rest of them up there. I personally just really like the tale they tell and like the investment you get with those characters. I think the A to B to C of it, like again, the main plot points are maybe not as strong, almost like a Dream Daddy-ish thing of just like it's the side story stuff that is really like probably near wins for me in terms of is the world different at the ending than it was in the beginning, right? Like if you're telling a tale of like, have you changed the world by the end? Like Wolfenstein, that's not its strongest suit, but like I don't think it's necessarily going for that. Yakuza 0 is a real estate tale that I don't know exactly what the state of that world is, but I know what it is for the main character, and it is definitely different and sets up the rest of that series in a way that I think, like Alex said, earns everything. I didn't play Night in the Woods to completion, so I don't know where that goes. But Pyre is like it's all the side stories with all the characters and like your choices in it, and I think it's really spectacular in that way. But it will get knocked out from this.
Yeah, and that's how I feel about Assassin's Creed Origins too. Like
all
I just
these games. I'm sorry.
Don't delete them.
Well,
Let's talk about them first.
We don't have to
highlighting them.
I know. So Assassin's Creed Origins, I think the thing that ultimately stops it from being on here is that I think the main murder plot is nowhere near as interesting as all the side stuff in that game. Like, and the thing about the side stuff is that there's a huge volume of it.
Yeah. Like
there's a ton of it, and that is the stuff that really endears Bayek to the player. That is the most interesting writing, where they kind of get into the nitty gritty of that the state of Egypt at that point. And the dueling sort of occupations of Greece and the Roman empires, and the ways in which that inflicts on just native Egyptians who are not really sure what the state of their country even is at that point.
Other than there's bandits everywhere.
Yeah, there's bandits everywhere, and there's a lot of soldiers everywhere. And that stuff's really good. Like I haven't finished the main plot because I just don't care that much about it. Like the whole time through, I've been going through. I was like, the Assassin's Creed nonsense around this is the least interesting part. If this game was just Bayek's adventure in Egypt and had nothing to do with Assassin's Creed,
great name.
It might fucking be better. It might be way better. So but ultimately, like I think that its main plot not being that interesting maybe takes it off this list.
All right.
I think Subsurface Circular tells a really interesting story. It tells like a story about like you're a robot that's a detective who like lives on this train. Like you don't have orders to be able to leave the train, so you're just sort of trying. It's like somebody basically is like, "Hey, my friend has gone missing." You're only talking to robots, so they're talking about another robot. They're like, "I'm not sure what happened," and it's just a journey of you trying to figure out what happened to that person's friend. And I think it's a really good story. I think it's really captivating. I think you meet a lot of really interesting characters, and I think the way the story unfolds is really interesting. I realize it's not gonna, it's not gonna be top 3.
Say it.
It's not gonna hang with these other ones.
All right.
Yay.
I'm glad we just all the way committed to that term on this one.
But I think it's a very, very good story. I really enjoyed it a lot. A Mortician's Tale, I think it's also a very good story. The thing with this game is I think about death differently because of this game. Like, this game stayed with me for a long time. It's not a super lasting game. It's not a super lasting story. And there are definitely moments of the story that are like too heavy-handed and a little too politically heavy-handed. I think it's good stuff and important to inform people about, but it's like it can read like a PSA at some points.
Yeah.
But I will say I think about death differently because of this game, which I think is really powerful and important. And we've already talked about Bury Me, My Love, and I'm sure y'all can appreciate why I like that story.
Sounds like heartbreaking.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I think we are talking about that top 4 right now.
Oh, Pyre. Pyre, you're a good story.
Hey, I loved Pyre's story. They did a great job with
Their
it.
characters are so good.
So good. And like there isn't really a bad one in the mix.
Just dump in here.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I think my argument for Night in the Woods is that it is very different from the other types of games we're talking about here, and also I genuinely think it's just a better told story than what Wolfenstein ultimately delivers on.
I mean that sounds crazy to me.
I'm
like
with you.
when I talk about Wolfenstein,
Yes.
like that's that is the story, the universe. Like that is the stuff about that game because it's not the gameplay.
I know,
I think,
it's not the gameplay in Night in the Woods either.
Yeah, but like at the same time, I would call Wolfenstein 2 like one of the best video games of the year.
It's also better
because of
being
the strength of that story, despite being like not a great game to play. Like that stuff goes so far beyond what other games are doing.
It just left me wanting a little more cohesion.
Yeah,
I'm totally there with you on its pure volume of good.
Yeah, they're addressing a really fucking wild subject.
Yeah.
And doing it without just dropping into just like shock value type stuff.
And it could have been.
Could have really
very easily could have been.
Yeah, they could have really fucked that up, and they strike a balance with that that makes it feel realistic, which makes it that much more terrifying.
Also, it's a Wolfenstein game.
Yeah.
I mean, I know
They got me caring about BJ fucking Blazkowicz.
But they got me caring about BJ fucking Blazkowicz in the last game, and
but
I
the
think
story in this one is better.
I
think it's.
I might disagree. I think the
said,
moments are much crazier in this game, and I think that those stand out a little bit more. But I think the thread of the story they're telling in the first game is actually like a little better.
I can't put my finger on what that is in the first game, though, other than like BJ joins up with the Resistance and gets revenge for the shit that happened in the 40s. Like,
I do like the ending of the first game.
The ending is handled better in the first game.
Well, your buddy in the
a lot of it is that the last level of the new one just sort of stops. Like, I think you said it feels like they ran out of time or they didn't finish the last level.
Yeah, it like that game goes from its like final confrontation about like fight these robots or just run away from them, I guess.
I mean, that last
to suddenly being
and then they barrel into an ending taking place somewhere else. Where the first game has like a really coherent, like big imposing boss fight at the end. And, like,
I didn't like the boss fight at the end, but I kind of like the reveal at the end of the first one. I mean, it's a little more twisty and a little more shock value.
Like the actual ending sequence of the first one feels more better considered.
Yeah, it's like
the second one,
right. It's
but I feel like the overall story in 2 is doing a lot more.
Like the difference for me is like it's the difference between the kind of scrappy group of like interesting characters who are maybe way outgunned and way outmatched, even with BJ's abilities, versus the part in Fast and the Furious where suddenly they work for the government and so they have unlimited resources and can kind of do whatever they want, even though they're still just kind of a weird ragtag bunch of people on a submarine. It feels like they're just capable of doing fucking anything in that game.
All that stuff is fine and good to me, but it's the stuff with the father and it's the stuff about adding texture to like Nazi America that really
it sounds
makes this
like
game
the
work for
argument
me.
here is Yakuza versus Night in the Woods.
Oh, Yakuza for sure. There's so much more going on there. There's so many more interesting characters.
Yakuza can't not be in the top 3 like that. That's I'm adamant about that.
Yeah.
But Night in the Woods, the story Night in the Woods is so good. Like, I don't know. I came in halfway through Yakuza, and it was very much like a soap opera thing, which is like fine. Like a lot of people, I think, are fine with that. But I just feel like the story Night in the Woods is so good. Like that is. It's bonkers to me that wouldn't be honest.
It's honest on a level that video games rarely hit.
Right, and I feel like I went through an emotional journey with the story in a way I didn't. I mean,
it's hard for me to think, like, not even having played it, to think that Night in the Woods is not on this list.
Yeah.
Like having heard everybody.
I think that the thing with me in Night in the Woods is like I really like the way the dialogue is written, and I think that gives it a lot of weight. But like the particulars of what's going on and the rest of it, like I didn't really do that much for me.
May's personal story, I think it totally does it for me. Like I think May's personal story is really good. Like I think she goes on a journey, absolutely. Like I think she's a different person beginning to end.
But even beyond that, just like the individual like scenes that you share with like the primary friend characters, like throughout, like those are all very well. Like I think the setups are great for them. I think they deliver on them. They go to some occasionally unexpected places, and they're fun. Like I enjoyed being in those spaces with those characters and kind of seeing that stuff develop.
I think it's hard when there's not someone to root for. Like, I rooted for BJ Blazkowicz, like a hero character.
I rooted
for May too.
There's nothing, I don't know, it's just a sad asshole cat.
I think she's funny.
She's going through serious, like,
charming.
dissociative episodes.
I didn't play all the way through it, but the whole tone I hated at the beginning.
The thing you got to understand is that, like, I'm speaking this from the perspective of someone who is very much a sad asshole.
Like a cat?
Well, and I love cats.
Yeah, I mean,
look,
cats are fine.
The way in which May May is fucked up in that game reminds me a lot of when I was like about that same age, like 19 or 20, and I was like living at home with my parents and had no idea what the fuck to do with my life. And I'll be honest, like my personality was fucking miserable around that time. And I understand that like maybe coming at it from a different perspective, like you don't necessarily like want to engage with that character because they are very unpleasant to be around. But like they don't treat her with they treat her with a great deal of care in a way that I greatly appreciated. Like they let her be fucked up and mess up and screw up relationships with people, but they don't treat her like she's somehow irredeemable or, like there's no chance that she'll ever get better. Like if anything, she learns those lessons the hard way, and I respect that.
Well, that seems like a specific, a specific type of person could honestly, and that doesn't,
No,
just because I didn't relate to it.
I am not that type of person. I would say I felt pretty put together as an older teen or a college-aged person, and I still found the story very relatable. I still found a lot of heart in the story. I find May very charming. I think she's funny. And I don't think you need to be that type of person to enjoy the story in this game.
I just feel like it's easier to like a story if you've got a figure like BJ that everyone can root for and be on the side of.
It's not BJ that makes Wolfenstein good.
That's he's part of it.
No, he's a hero.
Of
BJ is good, and I do think they make that character far more likable than they have any right to.
I don't disagree with you, Abby, but he is a surprisingly large part of
totally
why it's good.
But the thing I'd say is I didn't find May to be off-putting. Like the way May is in that game is more like it's just real. Like the strength of that game is that they've written like an incredibly believable cast of characters,
and maybe that's why it bored me.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted like crazy bombastic.
Really, I thought you only liked things that could actually happen. I thought you were really into things that were real and could
likes-
only
You're a big
happen in
mumblecore
reality.
guy, right?
I don't know what that is.
He likes anime stories like in Metal Gear.
Oh, right. Yeah, I forgot. He's a big anime
Yakuza
fan.
can happen, and that was really cool.
Also anime.
So yeah,
Is Night in the Woods a cool action guy story for cool action guys?
No, it is definitely not that. That I will concede. Absolutely.
There are two on this list.
Nier
that are
is.
that.
There it is.
so is Nier staying on this list?
There's
Yeah.
zero
Yeah.
chance
Yeah.
Nier is not on this
That's
list.
my winner.
And
sound pretty
that's
cool.
the thing is like I think Wolfenstein could win this category.
I agree. Either of
think,
those games.
I think
I'm
Nier
okay with
does
either of
win.
those, yeah.
But,
I think Nier does.
but I
win.
think there's an incredibly strong case for
Yeah.
Wolfenstein.
I could go
against
either
Nier.
way on
I
that.
keep thinking about it more, and it goes back to a conversation you and I had about like reviewing Wolfenstein. You're like, I could see giving this game like 2 stars or 5 stars,
Right.
Like just based on how it's carried by its moments
It
and
is
stuff in
definitely
a weird
propelled
way.
by that story in a way that I just wanted to see what the next beat was. And also, I will say this is a very technical thing, but the way that they kind of this is super technical and kind of wonky, but the loads between the action and the story are very fast. So like when you kick open that door, like the cutscene just kicks in a way that doesn't just have like a loading Wolfenstein
That's cool.
logo, which I thought was like very good for keeping things moving. I'd be willing to take Yakuza off this list for Night in the Woods.
No
No,
way.
Yakuza is such a thing.
Yeah, but I really like it. But also, I think it is not the. It is also a very well told crime story, which I think I have seen before.
in other Yakuza games, maybe.
Well, I haven't played the other ones, but like I've seen them in video games, movies, and in books. And like I think Night in the Woods, I appreciate. From the little bit I played of it, but from what I've heard, just what it's attempting to do.
Like,
the stories it's attempting to tell. Nier is just kind of off the wall, but like also at a very kind of, even for anime, kind of an original story, or even for sci-fi. Wolfenstein is just bombastic in a way that is it is a story that you want to see wrap
It's a little
up.
crazy that it was made. That this video game with what happens in that video game happened.
That's like I came away from going like, can't believe a company this company has a board of directors. This is like a bunch of people had to sit down and sign off on this thing, and they were like, no, yeah, this is the game we want to make. I'm like,
And they
All right.
temper some of that stuff with very personal character development, which I appreciate. It's not just all hatchets and Nazi heads. There's a lot of that, but there's also there's some actual touching stuff in there and human stuff in there that I really like. So yeah, I would be okay taking Yakuza as much as I enjoy all the development in that game for keeping Night in the Woods on, just because I want to also reward a game that is willing to tell a real mundane story. Not mundane, maybe that's not the right word, but
I'm staying out of this. You guys are gonna have to hash this one out.
That's crazy to put it over Yakuza from what I've seen.
And I
Yakuza
think
is awesome, but I tend to agree that like there are things about Night in the Woods.
Yeah.
Just in terms of just like getting dialogue right and getting the tone of a thing, getting the tone of a place and the people in that place right. I think they really do nail that. Like it feels like I look at that and go like, yeah, I grew up there.
Yeah.
Like those are my idiot friends.
Yeah.
We're fuck ups.
Just the
we
scene,
started a band. I don't know.
The very first scene where you finally get home and you can go talk to your parents, and they're both just like, I forget what they say, but it's very much just like, oh, you're here, hey, like, and it's just there's something about it's not like this
it's
big
like
dramatic
welcoming
scene.
without being like very showy about it.
I think it's an important thing to have in games.
Yeah.
Like I think it's, and again, it's not that the Yakuza story is bad. It's just it is a Japanese crime story that is told over the course of a very long time.
A prequel to a long-running series of that story over and over again.
But they could also mess it up.
They've told this one very well. Better than, I have certainly disliked some Yakuza games.
But on this list of 3 games, or on a list of 3 games that we need to make, it is probably the one that I feel like is the least daring or the least different or the least like, hey, we went out of our comfort zone to make this story that is unique and new.
And for me, I think that's, I mean, it's not that I think it's the least daring, but I think in terms of like executing on what it's trying to do, I think Wolfenstein is the weakest one on this list.
I just don't see it. I just don't understand.
No.
Like I am like,
I realize I'm on an island on this one.
No,
I
I'm
see
there
it
with
too,
you,
yeah.
but like
I think we're outnumbered on that one, and like I can see why Wolfenstein is on here. I do see it more as like a collection of moments. Like I didn't feel like it didn't feel like a coherent story in the same way that like Night in the Woods does.
I'd say that until I finished Nier, Wolfenstein was winning this category.
Absolutely.
Like hands
I
down,
was
not even an
100%
argument.
with you.
Like there's that I
like I was ready to come in here swinging over this category before I finished Nier for Wolfenstein. Like
I definitely
I think the Wolfenstein has to be.
Yeah,
I
it seems
definitely
like
I see the argument for a collection of
Right,
moments,
right.
and like I'm almost there. But then I also just keep remembering like the stuff on the submarine, which I think is actually
like it does
I think
flesh
that's
out.
fair.
Not only do I not agree, I just don't understand where you guys are coming from saying it doesn't feel like a complete story.
I think it's more for me. It's like
I can't process it.
I remember the different moments in that game, but when I look at something like Night in the Woods, it's not a collection of moments I remember. It is a full story. It's a feeling. It's a journey that I remember.
Wolfenstein feels like this is gonna sound weird, but it makes sense in my head. But Wolfenstein is like a series, is like a season of TV of TV episodes that are all have really good endings and really good moments. Whereas Night in the Woods feels like a really good movie to me. It feels like
I think that actually makes a lot of sense. Like I think Brad, I think if you just tell me the major plot
That's
points,
what I'm saying. Like if I were to delineate the events in Wolfenstein, it is a very clear and like orderly progression of plot points.
But the problem is in between each of those moments is a lot of like stumbling around the ruins of New York, not really knowing what you're doing, and just kind of like
I don't see how that has anything to do with
that's not the story.
Okay, I think ultimately what tears it for me is that I think that there are moments when Wolfenstein is very successful at what it's trying to do, both in terms of tone and delivery. But there are as many times in that game where I was just like, well, fucking all right. You know, like there are times when
like
the comedy doesn't land. There are times when it just feels like there are these very overwrought character moments that don't feel like they serve anything in there. Like it's trying to do a lot in a short amount of space.
All the Max Haas stuff.
Yeah, and like sometimes some of that is fine. Like it doesn't all work for me. Like it doesn't all cohere into a story I can say, yes, this meant something to me. This was really like I liked what the whole of what they were trying to do. Whereas when I look at Nier, Yakuza, and Night in the Woods, all 3 of those games told complete stories that completely resonated with me pretty much from beginning to end. Like that is the difference for me.
I came out of Wolfenstein 2 even after enduring the end credits thinking, well, that's a 5-star game. And it wasn't until I spent a lot more time with the gameplay end of it, and I was like, actually, there's some holes in the gameplay. Maybe it's a 4-star game. And now I'm like, maybe there's 3-star. But it's
but none of that's because of the story.
But none of that's because of the story. Like that story is so rock solid to me.
Yeah,
I get it.
And I think even the quiet moments on the boat work. I think
some of them very much do.
The time you spend with the side cast characters, I think that stuff is largely valuable. I spent a lot of time walking around just talking to the individuals.
I really like that stuff, and I like that stuff more than I think the part that you and I just disagree on are like the major like key plot points of Wolfenstein, I think were like MacGuffin-esque of like, oh, you put the nuke. I don't even know what the nuke did for the Uber command. Like it changed where you have to go for the top Nazis to Venus. Like okay, like that's
I mean, a couple of the justifications for
that's
why
what I mean,
you're
like,
going where you're going are kind of whatever.
Like
but
if
like
I
the
had the
major
right
plot beats are like extremely clear.
like what are they?
Well, I mean, like that specific one is you tried to blow them up at Roswell when they escaped. Like you literally walk past the rockets as they're taking off from Venus. Like you know that
like,
part is like that part in particular. I think is like,
but like what
perfectly
is it?
explained.
I just think it's like they're not meaningful to changing what happened. I mean, you are trying to push the Nazi machine back, and I think that's
also
important.
that level starts with you being like, okay, we got the nuke here. Wait, what? Like, how did you get the nuke there? Like,
They talk about it the whole way there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he spent a lot of time talking about that nuke.
yeah, but it just feels like all of a
Special loves the
sudden
nuke.
we have the nuke here. Like it's just like I don't know.
I think they like literally show him strapping it onto his back.
Is that what you mean,
the
or do you mean
fireman's
like
suit?
where'd they get it from? Or it's just like
I mean,
too
it's
convenient to
more
have
of
a nuke?
like oh, let's do the nuke thing now, and then they'd start doing the nuke thing. Like it's
Well, it was like, hey, we need to get our hands on a nuke, and they're like, you realize we have hijacked a nuclear submarine,
Yeah.
and like, oh, okay, so there's a bunch on here.
Yeah.
Let's do that then. That's a factor of them finally having like leadership in place through Grace, and she's like not necessarily like Caroline was. She's like, no, let's fuck this shit up, nuke this fucking place. Like their willingness to throw caution to the wind and say fucking nuke this American place is crazy.
Yeah.
But I think they get there. I feel like they get there with some reasoning, and they get there the right way.
I mean, yeah, but like, I equate the Wolfenstein story with like summer blockbuster style like theatrics, right? Like it is like it is big, it is bold.
I mean, the big moments are like that, but I feel like the undercurrents are,
so that's
are
what
way more thoughtful.
That's what I
than
do
that.
agree with you on. Like like with all the other stuff though, I do think it stays on this list because I do think they temper that with a lot of behind the scenes work for a lot of those characters that I really enjoyed. Like I really enjoyed the Fergus stuff and like his whole, trying to like find a partner there and like, his arm, and it was comic relief and it was goofy, but it was funny.
You brought the arm thing reminded me. I think they really bungled it on that. I think they set up this arm to be like, oh shit, like it's like betraying his body, and he like the first scene where his arm is malfunctioning, you're like, what's gonna happen with this guy? And then he's the comic relief. He becomes like the goofy arm guy. We lost his arm because he like made a jack off motion or something.
Yeah, but like
and he threw it off.
The way they gave Caroline that suit in the first game, and then that came back to be relevant in this game. Like I totally believe they have some plan for that arm in the third game.
I hope so.
Also, I kind of like that the arm didn't become like choke him out,
arm.
or
Medicare
arm.
happened, but like
Yeah.
I think the top three for me are Wolfenstein, Nier, and Night in the Woods.
that's me too.
Like I could totally live with that.
Yeah.
That's my pick. But
Excising.
I have not played Yakuza 0.
Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah, I haven't played it. I really liked what I saw of it.
Yakuza 0 is just some next level shit, man. Like the number of threads they set up for themselves and then inevitably have to try to tie together and almost completely successfully do is bonkers.
I'm curious, not to like throw shade. Have you played other Yakuza games?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
And
I just would like to know like how this stacks up in terms of its originality and story.
I've definitely asked that question of a bunch of people I know who really like Yakuza and have played if not every game, then pretty close to it. And the repeated statement I get back is, this is one of the best stories in the series. This is a great introduction to the series. It maybe only is not great in the sense that like it maybe sets you up for a little too much expectation for what's in Yakuza 1 and 2, which have not completely found their tone by the time they're in there. But by the time like 3 and 4 get around, like that's where it kind of goes, I think, around that stuff. But like 0 seems like a game that the fans really love and people who are coming to the series for the first time really love too.
I think it's tremendous. But I don't think it can make it on the list compared to what's already on here. I don't see a way to keep it on.
Well, I've already beaten to death what I think would keep it on, but
And we're definitely keeping Nier on this list.
yes.
Okay.
the Nier story seems really cool from what I've seen and what you guys have discussed and everything. Like, I don't like the gameplay, but that story seems pretty cool.
Yeah, there's some up and downs for me.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah, some aspects.
gets up its own ass a couple of times.
Right.
But like,
Which parts do you not like?
it goes a little bit on the like, what is life? What is like, what is thinking? What are robots?
Yeah.
But I think they, for the most part, deliver on going deeper than that. Of
And
like,
I think
I
the.
will-
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't finish it, but from a lot of what I played seems so heavy-handed and just so like hitting over the head about a lot of it that it was just like, oh, brother. But I realized it's more
I feel like
impactful as you play it.
I feel like that is a stylistic thing with anime. A lot of it is
Sure,
just
but, like, I
these
don't
like
think
there's a
that
lot
makes
of
it
like
okay.
no yeah it's like a matter of taste. But
I'm-
like
yeah.
I'm deeply intolerant of anime in general. Like I really don't have a lot of patience for that kind, some of that kind of heavy-handed storytelling.
yeah,
And
like that kind of breathless, like high-minded monologuing
Yeah.
about the nature
Right.
of life and
Oh,
existence, that kind of
brother.
thing. Like there is some of that for sure.
There is, but I think the way they ask those questions and what those questions ultimately serve in that game are far more interesting than just about any other
Yeah,
like attempts to do that sort of thing.
Yeah,
You
I
guys should
agree.
watch One Punch Man. That's all I'm gonna say.
Good.
I do feel like most of the things that like bothered me about Nier story were like wrapped up in like 9S, like just basically doing that monologuing and being like the nature of life. Why bother? The like
I also feel like I have seen that kind of those themes in a lot of other stuff. Like even in like Subsurface Circular, in Local Host, there's a lot of that. Like that doesn't seem all that new to me.
No, I mean the concept of just like machines questioning, or
Right.
like what is the nature of humanity? Like
Right.
that's
And
certainly
then like, oh, it
back to
turns
that.
That's the
out
thing is,
like
There's more.
nothing.
There's a lot more going on.
It's
there
not
than just,
about-
like,
No,
a
I'm sure,
lot
but-
It's
more.
not about like just AI trying to find like is it real, is it personality, like that that kind of like very basic ass notion of like is AI a person or whatever. Like it's much more just about like what do you do in absence of any sort of real purpose to your existence, especially one spread out over the amount of time that they are kind of they're kind of working with.
Also, okay, yeah, like machines trying to be human is pretty trite and has been done numerous times, and they do exactly that with the machine life form stuff, but the androids are like the inverse of that, right?
Right.
Because they have humanity. Like you see repeatedly that they have emotions, however they're built, they've got emotions, but they are forced to suppress them in service of this like awful cycle of violence that they are forced to carry
Right.
out over and over. You
Like
know?
the only purpose,
theoretically in the name of humanity,
Right.
Which,
yeah.
So
and on
like-
top of that, like the way they tease out the way the machines try to sort of emulate and design their own societies after humanity, like the ham-fisted way they go about it in all their various little enclaves and societies, like I think ranges from really fascinating to just flat out hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I even kind of like. I think it could be fleshed out a little bit better, but they do a good job of circling back on it on ending C. I think is Adam and Eve's subplot.
Right.
And the way they're trying to sort of suss out the nature of their existence and like what sorts of things should they be trying to sort of emulate from that.
I think that's where it got a little too anime for me. Was the fight when he's like, "Death is the only human part I haven't experienced."
So I think it gets a little muddled, but when it comes
Yeah.
around and they're talking about
Yes,
like
when he's with
leaving
his
and
brother,
starting
yes.
the new society.
I think
or
the
whatever.
my only real knock against Nier, I would say, is that I think that the B route is too much repetition
Yeah,
of the A route.
definitely
for
agree.
like the reveals, the things you learn from playing that game from 9S's perspective are like incredibly valuable to just like the overall plot of Nier.
Yeah.
And I think there's something there's something to be said about we're going to make you grind this out again because life is pain. But that was a little too much.
It's funny because they at the end of that playthrough they skip you through the last couple hours.
Yeah,
but
they skip a few key moments along the way too.
but right
but,
up-
that's,
yeah,
but
they make you play a lot.
I agree.
Of it.
That's my like,
that's
only
that's
main
I
criticism
feel
of
like
the game as well.
the storytelling I think like could be tighter.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that a
around
lot of that story could have been like interwoven into the first story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they just gonna
Yeah,
let you skip some of the more protracted.
I don't
I wish they found a
don't
better way
necessarily
of-
have like a solution to the problem necessarily, other than like what if the B playthrough was just like a greatest hits hour and a half, and just do the Call of Duty E3 demo of in the interest of time, and then
I wish they did
skip
that.
you ahead.
Wish they did that on the last boss fight of C. That is a long boss fight.
the
back and forth,
two eyeball thing.
Yeah.
It's a cool sequence, but it
Yeah,
goes on a
it's
little
a
too
really
long.
cool
I
sequence.
think
Jason has some thoughts on that boss.
Not happy about that. Not happy about that guy at all.
I feel like they mishandle some of the stuff in the tower toward the end. Like some of those reveals are not handled very elegantly.
It's definitely like, hey, you found this heavy shit in a fucking chest.
But also the two little girls in the red dresses and like the evil, scary voice at the end, like taunting you with some forbidden knowledge, and then they like basically open the cupboard and let 9S look in there, but they don't show you what it is.
Yeah,
and like, I don't know, that stuff. Like they never really clarify. Like I kind of
what's in there doesn't matter, man.
Well, no, I mean what's in there is the truth that like the whole Yorha thing is a cycle that is forced that they are forced to repeat over and over, so the machines can learn about whatever. But I feel like that stuff is not presented well at all. Although I did love that moment where even the evil machines, like you goad them into factionalizing.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah. You stop fighting them, and then they fight each other.
They're like, what if we stop fighting them and let them like just like overload themselves? And
one side's like, oh, it's valuable to have an enemy around because it makes you better, and the other one's like, no,
they're too big a threat. We have to stop them, and then they immediately start killing each other. Like that was an amazing moment.
That is so good. That part's good.
Yeah, I think that game wins.
It probably does. I could go either way between that and Wolfenstein, but that's probably
Wolfenstein is a very, very close second.
Probably
for me.
Nier is probably the consensus here.
I enjoyed that.
Or the closest thing to it.
I think Nier is something really special.
Yeah,
it made me
something special.
It made me immediately want to see what that dude does next.
Yep.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy, maybe.
It didn't make me want to go play the previous games, which is very against my nature.
And
I watched it. I watched an hour and 20 recap.
I went and read a bunch.
It was like a really long.
Was it the whole Drakengard?
Yes.
Yeah, I
all of
that
it
too.
Yeah,
it was very long.
I don't feel like it added a ton. I appreciate it.
I think I understood a bit about where they came from, but like
reading all the stuff about the first Nier made me like the new one a little bit less, actually. Like just for how JRPG some of that stuff gets.
Yeah, I think the way that they kind of bring the concepts of that game into this game. You know, like I said, you're opening chests and finding heavy shit.
Yeah,
and I think that stuff could have been handled a little better for people who maybe didn't play that game.
Actually, I mean, after I went and read all the Nier 1 shit, I felt like I was better off not knowing. Like the mystery was more interesting than going and reading what the reality of the first game was, because it was just a little too crazy.
All right, so Nier is definitely staying on this list.
Yeah.
Wolfenstein sounds like it's definitely staying on this list.
Yeah.
Oh God, this is brutal.
Don't look, Alex.
No.
They're both just so good for completely different reasons. Like,
I mean,
choosing between them is killing me.
These are 4 fucking incredible stories in video games.
Even the stuff we cut.
Yeah, we cut a lot of really good stuff. Like I feel like there are years where this category is way less brutal.
Just wish I had finished Divinity. Would have just hopefully bolted up there. Who knows?
2018's 2017 game.
That's right. The time Vinny married a skeleton or something.
I was the skeleton.
You can make it rain blood.
Yeah, I know. I like what I played of that game so far.
I feel like Night in the Woods is the game that stays on the list. Alex, what do you think?
I can't choose. I seriously, I can't, because I think that, like I said, there's a trio of games where the stories like completely won me over 100%, and it's unfortunately Wolfenstein is the one that is not part of that trio. Every other one is on here, so like trying to pick one or the other is just, I don't know. Like I don't think I can actually do it.
Dan, your definite list would be Wolfenstein and Yakuza, right?
Yeah, I have zero interest in Night in the Woods.
Okay, or Nier, right?
Nier, I think some of the stuff you guys have talked about and brought up, it sounds really interesting to me, and like the way it handles the endings and everything, I think is really cool. Whereas I couldn't relate to, like, it's a personal preference thing. I can't relate to anything in Night in the Woods. I don't like any of those characters. But that's just me.
Not even Greg.
I didn't like any of them.
Okay, but Dan?
Jerks, yes. I mean, that's all right. That's fine.
Yay!
I have nothing against that.
Yeah, but Majima dances pretty well too.
Majima's way cooler than that.
He's got some cool dances.
I like Night in the Woods on this list because I think it's
from hearing how personal the story touched people in Night in the Woods.
Yeah,
like to me, like even if it's not necessarily like a personal touch, I think it is just like there's a quality to the dialogue writing in that game that you don't get out of most fiction. Period, regardless of medium. Like writing, teen to young adult dialogue, fucking everyone sucks
games
shit at it.
So
and
many
games
times.
are some of the worst. Like you go back to fucking Life is Strange,
I
talking about
know.
watching that Final
Oh,
Fantasy
brother.
movie and all that other stuff.
Like there are moments in some of those games, like
Yeah,
that, and
yeah.
like Oxenfree. Like there are
Right.
times when it feels like they nailed it, but it's never like as complete as Night in the Woods
Right.
feel like it does.
Night in the Woods feels like a coherent thought on a serious topic that they handle without beating you over the head.
Absolutely.
And I like that a lot about it.
Yeah.
I that makes me want to give it the nod. I think Yakuza 0 is incredible. I've not finished the game, and like these discussions over the last few days make me really want to go back and start it over again.
It's very winding.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's what they're doing, right? They're definitely like going off of like a lot of Japanese serials,
Yes, totally.
and a lot of these things that like you see where they're pulling it from for sure. Not to mention the previous games in the franchise.
I'm not going to hold this up all night. Like I think I've said my piece and I've made my feelings clear on this stuff. And I think for Yakuza, like it's an incredible thing that works in just about every context that it tries. But if I had to pick, I guess ultimately, yeah, I would probably go Night in the Woods over it.
All right, let's do that.
Okay.
Brutal.
Can't find my cursor. Somebody else cut it.
I got it.
Man.
You did this.
It disappeared. Where is it?
Man.
Day 4.
And so
Shit got real.
near wins?
Near wins.
Near wins.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
I feel like it's really close. Like I said, there's just stuff about Wolfenstein that is I feel like really it's mind blowing for that game to address the stuff it addresses as well as it does.
Yeah, and you all feel very strongly about it. My issues with it are not a dislike. Like I don't have a problem with it being on here. It's
Yeah,
just that I felt
totally.
more strongly about the other stories. But I totally get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
But Nier is on another level
Absolutely.
in some really fucking magical ways.
Yep.
There's some wild stuff in that game.
Yeah.
For sure.
But also, it's dealing with a lot of topics that I think are not necessarily new concepts, but I think it is making those uniquely. It's delivering its spin on them in a unique way, while also like adapting them for being in a video game in really fucking fantastic ways.
Yeah.
And it does the thing that MGS5 did. It does the next time on thing.
Oh yeah,
And
that's a good move.
And like as soon as it happens, you're like, "Fuck yeah!"
Oh, right.
Like it totally does the
That's right.
like, end
There's
of
like a
chapter one,
trailer
like the
for-
same way
for
Phantom
Route
Pain
C.
did.
That's
Like
awesome.
the trailer,
Yeah, that's right.
especially coming off the end of Route B, where it
Yeah.
is largely just A with some new perspective
Yeah.
thrown in.
Yeah.
To finish that and have it go, oh, by the way, there's fucking way more shit. You
Especially
haven't even
'cause
seen,
at that point,
and all
I-
of it's crazy.
At that point, I assumed Route C was just going to be another playthrough
Yeah, no,
of the game.
it's-
So to see that it was all totally new stuff.
Does it do the teaser thing after each ending?
No.
No, it's
So
just,
it's just after the second one?
Just the one time.
Cool.
yeah, it's
they save it.
rad.
It's pretty nuts.
It's a weird world.
It really is.
Yep.
And let me tell you about these video games.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Let's talk about these categories. Best debut, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, Cuphead, Night in the Woods. Best style is Cuphead also. Persona 5, Yakuza 0 also rounding out best style. Best new character is Bayek from Assassin's Creed Origins. Pascal from Nier Automata and Damien from Dream Daddy are also in there. And the best story is Nier Automata, with Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus, and Night in the Woods.
All right.
Savage Day.
Yeah.
Deeply.
Yeah.
Just like HQ. And the
rough-
best character, Scott Rogo.
Happy birthday, Scott.
Congratulations. to the
Savage
best suit.
categories, for sure.
Speaking of Savage,
Yes?
tune in tomorrow.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy.
The final day.
Boy, I bet that'll go over real easy. Judging by
yeah.
the rest of these conversations.
Oh, yeah.
But the thing is, we've had all those conversations now, and I feel like that will very directly inform everything that's going to happen. We're talking like 20 minutes.
We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, it seems like
Tomorrow, tune in for for 15 mints of discussion on these 4 categories.
That's right.
There's nothing left to say about them, honestly.
It'll be a light day for sure.
boy.
Lots of stuff on the site, videos, top 10 lists,
Yeah, hopefully.
stuff like that. We think.
Yeah, we think.
Barring disaster.
We've
At
all
the time of this
all the
recording.
time we booked to record videos is going to recording these podcasts. So we'll see how
Yeah,
it
we'll
We're on
goes.
see how it
video.
goes.
Yeah.
We're fine.
That's
Yeah.
right. There are
Hello.
these videos.
I'm hopeful we'll figure something out.
be recording
by the time you hear this.
me hanging out in my garage by the time we're done.
Yeah.
All right.
EPF.
That's sure. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.